It is December 11th, 9:02. I'll call the Wright County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
All right, the County Board minutes from November 27th.
Mr. Chair, I have just a small correction on page 7. Under Advisory Committee, Advisory Board updates, number 1, instead of annual Safe Schools meeting, it was the Annandale Safe Schools.
Anything else?
Nope, with that change, I will move the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Burrell. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Agenda. Does anybody have anything they need to add or remove?
Mr. Chair, I believe we can remove consent agenda item E. I'm told that that issue has been resolved and we do not need to take action on that at this time.
Okay.
Which item?
Consent E.
Okay.
On the consent, yeah.
And then, Mr. Chair, Lee.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to schedule another budget committee of the whole? Should we put that on here to talk about, or is it?
We'll be talking about it when we get to the draft budget, item E,
Yes,
under regular agenda.
Okay, that's fine.
Is there anything else? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Vetch. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to remove for further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the note that item E has already been removed.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Houston. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Timed agendas. Award-winning Mr. Bob Hevilla.
Good morning, Board.
Morning.
The first item on the agenda is a plat. This is in Maple Lake Township. The proper notices and signatures are in place. The Mylar is in the back office on the table. So, Board, I'm asking you to approve registered land survey number 46 in Maple Lake Township.
Mr. Chair, I'll make an approval to approve the plat for land survey number 46.
And Mr.
Second.
Chair, I'll second the approval of Commissioner Vetch's approval of the plat.
Is anybody else confused? Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Potter. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimous.
Board, today I have several people from my office down here. We're trying to dominate here. But I have Jen and I have Matt here because our next item is approve the November 14th Ditch Committee of the Whole meeting from the continuation of public hearing County Ditch 33. So in your package should be the minutes. I have Jan and Matt here if you have any questions on those minutes. Or if you want them to read them out loud, then sure they would.
Does anybody have any questions regarding it?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 14th Ditch Committee of the Whole regarding Ditch 33.
I'll second that. Whatever.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Burrell. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Board, the third item on the agenda, if you remember, we accepted the responsibility to enforce the buffer strips. So today is actually the acceptance of that buffer riparian grant of $97,125. We thought they were going to split this up into 2 different years, but Matt said that we're going to get this whole grant up front. So, Board, I'm asking for a signature on the acceptance of the buffer riparian aid grant.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the buffer enforcement grant in the amount of $97,125.
I'll second that with a question.
Motion by Commissioner Betts, second by Commissioner Hewson. Question?
Just curious at how we're going to go about determining how to use these funds, or just,
Mr. Chair,
we're going to come
Commissioner-
up as a case by case, or divide them up, or, you know?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hewson, if I may, we did talk about in the budget process that we're still carrying half of Matt's salary and benefits in the levy. The other half of his salary is going to be split between this grant and the benefit landowners.
Okay.
And the other part of that would be to buy some technology, whether it be the drone or the MobiTrack.
MobiTrack?
MobiTrack, there you
MobiTrack? Okay.
So we have some hardware and technology that we're also going to go after.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Edge?
Bob, do you know when we'll be beginning sending out letters? And Matt maybe knows better as far as the buffer enforcement goes.
Here, I'll let Matt answer that.
Yeah, so the deadline was November 1st, but until this is signed by both us and Bowser, I'm not able to do any work on it. So I'm assuming within the next couple weeks, then we would get the report from Soil and Water, which parcels are in non-compliance, and then we would send out a corrective action notice.
So we shouldn't expect anything to go until probably the first of the year at the very soonest.
I'd say something around there, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and second. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Mr. Bryan.
Good morning. This request is similar to a number that the board has considered in the past few years. Mr. Dwight Dolan is an appraiser that we've used previously for tax court matters. This particular case is the strip mall in the city of Delano, which actually includes Coborn's, a number of other businesses, and then CVS Pharmacy has a separate building out on the west end of the parcel. The good news is that we have, the last 2 or 3 years, we've had reduced numbers of tax appeals each year. Currently, we're working on, this is a Pay 2017 case, and I think we have this one and 3 others still pending, if you will. And the filings for Pay 2018 were reduced as well. So things are trending downward in terms of the numbers of appeals that we have, and we're just requesting to retain Mr. Dolan for this particular one. And again, we've actually I've worked with Mr. Dolan on a number of cases. We've always ended up settling. We haven't had to go to trial on any of these. So his not to exceed figure here is $15,000 if we need a trial ready appraisal. But in the past, if he's done, we've had some cases where he's done preliminary work, and that has given us enough information to settle these cases. So just asking to retain him according to his proposal here.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the retaining of Dwight Dolan to perform appraisal for purpose of tax court.
Second that.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Hewson. Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Virgil Hawkins, County Highway Engineer.
Well, good morning, Chairman Deladen and Board of Commissioners. Today there's 3 items for your consideration dealing with highway. The first one we have is to approve Transportation Committee of the whole meeting minutes from October 29th, 2018, and this meeting was held at the City of Albertville. And the topic this night, the only agenda item, was Highway 19 and 38 federal noise wall requirements. And as part of that meeting, Jacqueline Corkle and WSB and Andy Plowman gave a presentation, and the minutes follow. I'll kind of summarize the minutes here with some background. Highway 19 and 38 project, there's federal funding for construction involved, and with that, noise is required to be studied, and noise walls need to be considered along the project if federal thresholds are approached or exceeded, or if sound levels increase by 5 decibels or more than what they are today. So a noise study was conducted. There were no locations that the sound increased by 5 or more decibels over current conditions. However, there were locations where sound exceeded federal thresholds, and these locations were along the trail portion only, for the trail that's planned to be built, there's no trail there now. So with that, there was calculations completed to determine if the noise walls would be feasible and reasonable, and there were 24 locations studied along these highways. 16 locations were determined to be reasonable and feasible, and the way it works and was explained to property owners on the land where this trail would be built get to vote and determine if a noise wall needs to be built or not. And the county is the primary landowner on a lot of this area, but there were some property owners that were invited to vote. There were actually at the Transportation Committee meeting, the recommendation was just to hold a public meeting, which we did following that Transportation Committee meeting, take input, and then come back to the board, which is here today, to have the county vote. So that's really the summary of the meeting minutes to be presented here today. And then the next item on the agenda, I have information on the votes we received and then requested action for the vote on this.
Commissioner Potter, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just for clarification for the public. Anytime you get federal money, that noise wall discussion now just automatically gets put into it, whether it makes sense or not. You still have to expend the time, energy, and money to do this, which is not all a bad thing, but in some cases like this, there should be an exemption clause, but they don't have such a thing. I thought it was a very well-run meeting. Thank WSB for all that information and the highway staff, department staff that was there. And I think quite a few of the public people that were there, I think, got a better understanding of what's going on, and even they scratched their head, what's the sense of this? But it's part of the requirement. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the Transportation Committee of the whole minutes from October 29th, 2018.
I will second that.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Commissioner Hewsome. Is there any other discussions?
We look alike.
Yeah. I do have one question. Did we receive any comments from any of the residents at all?
We did, and we also, when Jeremy, our right-of-way agent, met with some of the landowners, they had similar confusing questions that we did about, why we would put a noise wall up between the pathway and the curb.
Yep.
And I'll explain later, but we did receive 8 votes. There were 16 people invited to vote according to the process. We received 8 votes, 7 voted no. 1 voted yes, but they were a secondary beneficiary house behind that really doesn't affect the noise in their property.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
Yep.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous regarding the minutes.
Thank you. The next item is a request to actually vote, have the board vote on the noise walls, and there's 3 separate resolutions because there's 3 separate cases. There's one resolution where the county votes is the only voter. These are areas where the walls are in property where just the county has right-of-way. That's the first resolution. The second one is where there are some residential votes, but the county owns the right-of-way for most of where these walls are. County votes count twice the value of the property owner votes. And then the third case is primarily private property owner votes. No votes were received for all walls from property owners. There were 2 parcels on wall C. 1 private property owner voted no, and the other vote is by the county. So if the county votes no, then there will be no wall there. If the county votes yes, then we have to build the wall.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to vote no on barriers for A, D, J, L, Q3, R, and T.
I forgot M.
Did I forget M?
It's not there.
Oh, Barry C, I'm
Your
sorry.
motion is to
Barry
vote
C.
no on them?
Yes, we know, no sound wall.
No sound wall.
Oh, I see, it's not required.
Yep.
Okay.
Not
Second.
required.
I'll
I
second
had to
that.
follow the-
And, Mr. Chair, you know, it was.
Second by Commissioner Potter
Oh, I'm
already.
sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear him.
So motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Potter. Questions?
I thought it was a very informative meeting and, you know, learning about the decibels and requirements and, you know, it's just one of those things that's required. So even though it doesn't make sense to put a sound barrier between a business and the county road, you know, I mean, obviously it would impede, you know, their business in the one case anyway, or the one wall. But yeah, it was good. It was good information. So appreciated that.
I know
Any
more
other
about-
questions?
Yeah.
I know more about sound barrier walls than I've ever known before, so.
Commissioner Vetch?
It's a resolution, yes.
Yep.
So aye.
Aye.
What?
But,
Well,
no, well, no.
the resolution
The resolution
was
was for him to say no,
say
so I
no.
say aye for the no.
Hey,
Are we clear on this now?
no,
Okay.
clear as mud. Commissioner Burrell?
I'm with Derek, aye.
Aye.
I know.
Mark wanted to get us all confused on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Next one.
Thank you. The next resolution is for barriers, noise barriers for noise barriers E, M, and P.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion again to vote no on barriers E, M, and P.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Burrell. Resolution, Commissioner Burrell?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Resolution carries unanimous.
It's correct down here where it's
You know-
noise barrier E, M, and T, but in the paragraph on that resolution, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph down, it spells out A, C, D, E.
You know,
So it's on 2
It's on all of them.
Yeah.
resolutions, okay,
It's on all 3 of them.
okay, got
do
it.
you, Mr. Chair, maybe just to clarify this, are we going to reword the resolution then? Because really, we should be making a motion to vote no on the resolution or something, or whatever. It says, now therefore be it resolved that the Wright County Board Commissioner vote is as follows. Vote to construct a noise barrier, and then it goes yes or no.
Right.
So we really should be voting no, probably.
Well, no, because
Well,
the
I
motion
think-
was to vote no, and we're all agreeing that by saying aye for the vote no is basically us unanimously crossing out that no column.
Okay, all right. As long as that's clear. Okay.
I find this whole noise wall thing confusing.
Yeah.
Regarding the question Commissioner Hewsome had, where all noise walls are listed on each one the same.
Yeah, I think that paragraph you're referring to, that lists all the ones that would be voted on, but then further down below, that now therefore it be resolved.
Yeah, just a separate, and I don't know if that's,
Yeah, I was just questioning whether they should all be listed on each resolution or not, since,
but then again, it is a noise wall and it is confusing on its
True.
own merit, so this would just help.
And Mr. Chair, lastly, I will make a motion to vote no on barrier C.
I'll second that.
That was the last one?
That was last.
All right, motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Hewsome. Commissioner Potter?
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous.
Thank you. The third item today is to approve Transportation Committee of the Whole minutes for meeting November 13th, 2018. And I'll kind of summarize the minutes. There were 5 topics at the meeting. The first one was a potential jurisdictional change. Our County Road 134, City of Buffalo has requested to take that over as a city street. And that is a segment of our highway system that has been identified as a jurisdictional change dating back to our 1995 transportation study. So there was discussion about how that jurisdictional change would take place and drafting of an agreement, and the city requested we expedite the request. So we did, just as a follow-up, we did draft an agreement and send over. It was found out later that there's portions of the highway that are not in the city limits. So the city has gone ahead and proceeded to annex the right-of-way, and I think it went to the township last night to be approved. And I'll find out the results of that, but it's still moving forward, and but that was a recommendation to move forward with the jurisdictional change. The second item was an update on the I-94 MnDOT project and potential impacts to County Highway 19. And this is a project, MnDOT received Corridor of Commerce money, and they would like to begin the improvements in 2019, which could have a potential impact if they get these design build bids in, and if one of the teams requests to, they're anticipating they could possibly request to close 19 for a period of time to build the bridges. So they wanted to get that out in front of us to be aware of it. So it was really an informational item at this time. It's something we may have to consider in the future. The next item was an update on our 2019 construction program. And due to the number of concurrent county, city, and state highway projects in the Albertville area planned for 2019, we've had meetings with the city of Albertville, not Otsego, and with MnDOT. And as part of the outcome of the meetings, it was agreed that it would be best to delay the work on Highway 37 that was originally planned to be built next year. The plans will be finished. The right-of-way will continue to acquire it, but because mainly the final straw was the 94 project that was going to move forward next year. And so, again, this is an informational item, but we'll plan on delaying the 37 highway work.
Are you going to send a letter to the residents on 37 then, letting them know?
We will. Right now, we've intentionally not done that because we'd like Jeremy to meet with the landowners and get the right-of-way acquired. And as he meets with them, he'll let them know that it's possible it would be delayed. But we'd just like to finish that process first, and we'll be notifying everybody. The next item was a state aid funds request advance that we're going to need because some of the federal money that we're going to use to build 19 and 38 next year, we're not going to be able to receive till 2020. And there's $4 million of federal money going towards that project. And 2.9 of that $4 million won't be available until 2020. So in order to construct it next year, we'll need to advance our state aid money from 2020 into next year to fund the improvements.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Virgil, this is kind of a common practice on big projects like this throughout the state, not just unique to Wright County.
Correct. Yeah, and this one, some background, the Highway 38 portion is, we do have the federal money coming next year for that. And then the 19 portion, it was a grant received in a separate year, but we decided to combine the projects and do just all one big project, which makes sense. But the funding for the 19 part is a year later. And then the last item we had, County Ditch 10, and the county's going to be doing some improvements coming up on County Ditch 10 that will impact 2 large box culverts underneath Highway 6 and Highway 5. And we did some preliminary cost estimates to replace those culverts. We just want to make the board aware of that for a future budgeting item. It was just an informational item. So we'll bring those forward when we do our budgeting for 2020. That's a summary of the topics at that transportation meeting. If there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll ask for approval.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 13th, Transportation Committee of the Whole.
And any recommendations too, or were there some recommendations too?
There was, the one recommendation was just to proceed with drafting an agreement for
Agreement with the City of
jurisdictional change.
Buffalo.
All the rest were informational items.
Informational. That's included in it, yes.
In recommendation, okay, I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Burrell. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Virgil.
Ms. O'Hare.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board. I had come to you with a resolution for the local AIS prevention aid. This is our allocation of the $10 million that the Department of Revenue gives to the individual counties. We received about 2.3% of the total, or $227,925 for 2019. Just to be clear to you and for the public record, this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the regional inspection program. This is our AIS program overall, so it includes our education, our treatment, our rapid response, and any inspection programs that we have. So just to clear, this is overall, and basically it acknowledges the amount of money and then designates Wright Soil and Water that will receive the money and administer the programs as the delegated authority.
Thank you for the clarification.
I wanted to make it clear. I saw some chatter, so I just wanted to make sure it was on the public record.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution, but I do have discussion after.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Burrell, second by Commissioner Houston. Discussions. Charlie.
Yes, and I know this is strictly just turning the money over to you guys to distribute it out, but at some point, because a large portion of this, what is about over 100,000, about 114,000 of it is going toward the Wright Regional Inspection Program, correct?
The budget's not official yet, but the current estimations, just for the record, are to have we generally allocate $30,000 to our decontamination program, which would operate at the regional inspection site if such a program existed in 2019. Then based on the proposed lakes that will be addressed, late at a future time, we're approximating about $35,000. So that's $95,000 for decon and inspections. But sorry, I just have one more thing. We are also right now our budget is about $50,000 for administration. That is partially in anticipation of the demands of the regional inspection program. So that may go to the general AIS administration, may also go to the regional inspection.
Okay, and I guess my point for raising it, Mr. Chair, is at some point, and I didn't think people would really do this, but I'm told that they do. Where we have people come in, and I'm believing them, I guess maybe naively, but that they want a ordinary high water level raise or no wake zone, and I'm hearing from other people that it's not always what they're saying. It's they want to impede the traffic onto the lake, and I just want to make sure, that's all I'm saying, is make sure that you're looking at this to see if it truly is for the purposes of the AIS, or if it's being promoted to make it more difficult to get on certain number lakes, because then what that does, it does drive traffic to some other lakes where we don't have the funds, and I know it's a tough call. I couldn't make the deal, but I just, I believe that I've heard from enough fishermen and stuff that is kind of behind the scenes a goal to it, so whatever,
We can certainly talk about that at the committee of the whole.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Vetch.
Yeah, Charlie, I mean, it's unfortunate that we have to allocate $50,000 for administration. It's unfortunate that the paperwork and the logging that's being required to do this program is daunting. It's making it very cost ineffective. I mean, look at it, of the $227,000 that we're getting in the county, I mean, we have $85,000 allocated into this very small pocket. I mean, that's over 30%. Yeah. And of that 85,000, I mean, 50,000 of it just for administration to count how many boats are going in, how many boats are going out, how many tags are in, tags are out. I mean, unfortunately, it's just poor allocation of the funds, I feel, so.
I do, excuse me. Go ahead,
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, the DNR requirements are such that we need to follow the law on that and do as we're supposed to and as we're told, whether we like all that paperwork or not.
And I do, okay, so.
I was going to, sorry.
No, but I said, I do attend the Soil Water Conservation District Board meetings, and I do believe they are looking at this too to see, it's a pilot program, and do we continue on with it and stuff. So I think that discussion will take place a lot more over there. But I just want to put it out that I know that's not what it's about here today, but it's a large amount of money of this share that we're putting over to the soil water, and I think it needs to be really scrutinized heavily how it's allocated.
I think we're the 13th or so in the amount of money that we get. Just in line of based on the amount of money that we're allocated, we're about the 13th county in order. So it is awesome.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well,
Mr. Chair, I do want to note, though, that, I mean, this is still, I mean, it's a small decline. I mean, I think it's less than $100 less than the year before, but it's been a kind of a steady less and less funds going back from 16, 17, 18. We're still, the state's allocating less, or we're getting a less allocation. I shouldn't say the state's allocating less.
Other counties are building more parking spaces.
Yes, that's what I wanted to illustrate out. Yep.
Sorry to jump in there.
No, I appreciate it. That's what I was getting to, so thanks for.
So in other words, if we want more, we're going to build more parking.
I guess.
Or accesses, the parking spaces would likely be the cheaper of the two, so.
And the less riskier to the lakes.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. This is a resolution. Again, it's just to accept the aquatic invasive species prevention aid from the state of Minnesota for a amount of $227,925 for 2019. Commissioner Burrell?
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous.
Thank you. See you at 11.
Yep. See you later. Committee of the Whole, Commissioner Batch.
All right. Commissioners met for a committee of the whole on November 26th to discuss the administrator role pending an agreement to make this change at the first of the year. There's a discussion on the role of labor negotiations, which will remain the same as that it has at this point. Same with labor relations. It will kind of stay similar to what it is at this point, with a small modification of a 2-month settlement is $10,000 or above that the board approval would be required. Department head settlements will require board review and authorization. Department head reviews will be conducted by the county administrator. We'll continue the use of a 360 survey, and board members will be asked to provide input if they desire. The review of the administrator will be conducted by the board, with the first review to be completed at 6 months anniversary and then 12 months thereafter. Terminations, administrative leave, current practices will be changed. Terminations, administrator will process all terminations except department heads. These will be done with the consultation of the county board chair or the entire board if time permits. Contractual authority and contracts will retain current levels as defined within the existing procurement policy. This policy, however, is currently under review by the administration and the auditor's office, both for thresholds as well as the risk to the county. Changes will come forth to the board for their approval in the future. Future goal will be to have all contracts deposited into a centralized depository. The last item is board meetings. Board departments will continue to present their agenda items to the board. Kelly stated that he would like to recommend reducing board meetings to 2 or 3 per month, with one open Tuesday being used for a workshop day. Discussed the idea of moving HHS board meetings to Tuesdays, incorporating it into the regular board meeting. With that, I will make a motion to approve the minutes and some discussion here as to where we want to go forward with this as far as adopting or drafting up a resolution to make this change or modifications to it.
So what about the recommendations on it?
There is no, did I?
Yeah.
On the second page.
I didn't, that page is missing from mine, so. Okay, all right. Sorry, I didn't get that page here, so. Committee structural, Kelly would like to look at streamlining this process to reduce the number of committees of the whole. Discuss the reduction of current committees, building, personnel, ways and means. Incorporating these into workshops, suggested that the committee, along with the recommendations, be placed on the consent agenda, and if the board feels interested, they can remove them for further discussion. It was also suggested that if the matter has not been budgeted for or planned for and has a budgetary impact, then it should go to a committee or a workshop. I myself expressed concerns that both transparency and board control could be lost through elimination of committees. Basically, Commissioner Potter expressed that a good administrator will do what the board wants. Basically, the recommendations were to recommend implementation of all the points identified by Coordinator Kelly, except the committee structure. Existing committee structure shall remain the same. Workshops at the utilization for strategic planning, go to 3 board meetings a month with 1 workshop. And number 4, HHS meetings will be incorporated into the regular board meeting and provide presentation either bi-monthly or quarterly. So with that, I will open this up here to discussion.
Can I have a motion?
I have a motion to adopt the minutes. I don't know if we wanted to have discussion about the recommendations. So.
Yeah, well, that we can do. Motion by Commissioner Vetch. You can second it. By Commissioner Potter. All right. Discussions. Commissioner Burrell?
I was at the meeting and I do not recall I don't think we talked very much about it with the recommendation to HHS meetings be incorporated into regular board meetings.
We talked about it for quite a while.
Mr. Chair, if I can, the reason we discussed that is because there's a little bit of disconnect in documentation happening at the HHS meeting, and by incorporating the contracts being signed and have that part of it taking place at the county board meeting, it would be able to have a better connection of hubbing that information with administration, is kind of help facilitate that centralized depository for all the contracts. Because right now, it's a little bit difficult for them to get all the information that they need.
So we would not have HHS meetings then?
Well, we would have HHS at the conceptual level at this point, is that we would move to just doing workshops where all the presentations and the question and answers would happen at a HHS workshop. And so at that point, we'd be getting all those METS presentations, those child protection presentations, those public health presentations. That'd be kind of that question and answer piece for us at that point. But all the adoptions of all the contracts that we do with the different providers would take place at the county board level.
Okay. And I'm wondering if we've had legal look over this, because the HHS board, which we are, when we're acting as the Health and Human Services Board, is the Health and Human Services Board. It's not the county board, and that board does have delegated authority in law, in state law. I'm wondering if by doing this here, if we're not doing something that's
Mr. Brian, you want to come up?
Right.
And I'm not sure, I never ran this by Brian, I don't know if he's even prepared for it, but the HHS board has very spelled out duties and responsibilities and power over in the county.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Burrell, there is a chapter, I think it's 403, that has human services powers in. And I remember looking at this before. I don't recall what my conclusions were, whether they could be combined. I don't know if Lee has any information on that from other counties, but I am aware of the fact that some counties do not meet as a separate Human Services Board. So I can certainly look at that issue for you, but I'm not prepared today, so.
Mr. Chair, Chief Deputy, would that be something then equivalent to where the county board is acting as the ditch authority? At that particular meeting, would we say we are now acting as the Health and Human Services Board when we would make a decision? Is it something like that, would the way you would see it, maybe?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Burrell, that may be very possible. I don't know how these other counties have kind of formulated their decision-making process as far as human services matters, but I do know I've gotten some kind of sideways looks from attorneys from other counties when I said, oh, our Human Services Board meets separately on twice a month on Mondays, and kind of like, well, why are you doing that? Why are you bothering with those extra meetings? So it's something that I could take a look at, but that may very well be true, is that you can say, okay, we're going to consider human services, health and human services matters now.
So, okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, then, so if I understand it right, we're still going to meet, but it would be more like a workshop type meeting.
Yeah.
And then they would make recommendations that would be acted on at the county board meeting. And at that point, we would be acting as the Health and Human Services Board when we would vote on that, more than likely. However, the law would allow it to happen.
And Mr. Chair, because we haven't really defined this out in that committee of the whole. It got pretty lengthy.
Yeah.
And I mean, the envisionment in my mind is that we would have a workshop that would be on that third Tuesday that would be more to the general county stuff, and we'd have maybe bi-monthly or quarterly have the HHS workshop that would be separate, that we'd have maybe on the Monday, that we'd basically dealing with just HHS presentations, depending on the frequency and the recommendation by Health and Human Services as to what would meet the needs for them.
Yeah, if they're thinking, I mean, in terms of every other month, for these presentations, and that's, we get sometimes a presentation every month, but here's Jamie.
I guess, Mr. Chair, while she's approaching the podium, that was kind of my original intent. Commissioner Burrell is correct. There is statute that specifies you have to have a Health and Human Services Board. Excuse me. I'm sure Jamie will speak to that. I know we've had some casual discussions about the different methods of how that is carried out within the counties and the state. What I'm most familiar is similar to what you described. You put on hold the county board meeting and then take place as the Health and Human Services Board, then resume the meeting, similar to as you described as like the ditch committee hat you'd put on. So with that.
Good morning, Board. Yeah, and I just became aware of this maybe late Friday afternoon, so I haven't really wrapped around it at all. I went to a new director school like 3 or 4 years ago, within a couple of years of after I took over the position, and we discussed the chapter that Brian mentioned about how boards are set up, and within those group of directors that were there, I think all three, and I think there's 3 different ways to do it, all 3 were represented that their counties do. So I mean, I have no objection to moving in a different direction. I think this past year when we went from 2 board meetings, 2 HHS board meetings to 1 board meeting, it certainly streamlined some of our things, and it made us, I think, look at our agenda more carefully to see what we would be bringing forward. At the same time, I think we enjoy the opportunity to have some one-on-one time, so to speak, with the board. If that can be met in a different format, like workshop, I think, that would be fine. I'm not quite sure about what it means as far as moving, bringing recommendations and having them come later at a different date for approval or something like that. I would just hope that we could get our timelines worked out so it doesn't, make things, wait longer than that they would need to. And I'm not aware of any issues with contracts other than, I think we've been solidifying some of our processes in-house for contracts, but if there's any issues with contracts, I'm not aware of them, and I'd be happy to hear more about it. Is it just to bring them more into one area, or, because I think we have a pretty robust contract area repository where we keep our contracts, and I think that is available to the auditors. So I'm certainly, we don't have anything that we're trying to hold back on the contract side, and I'm not quite sure
Mr.
what that
Chair,
issue
I
is.
don't want, that was not a slam on HHS. It was the fact that they just, administration wants to be able to retain copies as well as yourself. Just because
Absolutely.
we want to be able to have one centralized location in the county.
would be happy
that has,
to.
everybody has all the information. So it's nothing against what you're doing. We're just trying to make it easier for administration to account for all the contracts that are taking place within the county.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Houston?
I think that it helps streamline when you have business that needs to be approved, instead of waiting for a month or 2 weeks, that it's on the, well, if we have 3 meetings per month, you'd be able to address those business issues, but then we could still have our workshops.
Right.
We can hear our presentations and that kind of thing. And, I mean, it's like now, the request for staffing changes or whatever, if you're sending something to committee, it comes on our county board, agenda now, so.
No, I can certainly appreciate the making things more streamlined. I think we're often confused about what goes where at some times,
Right. Yep.
And those kinds of things. We had a snafu not too long ago with board meetings, because we're not extremely versed in, some of the rules surrounding that. So I think, I'm certainly not opposed to doing it. I just want to, again, I think our staff, I think it'll probably change the venue a little bit. I think our staff sometimes enjoy presenting to the board, and I think that'll just happen in a workshop versus at a board, because, I think
feel
some
like
of those
a board.
dynamics will change a little bit.
It'll feel kind of like a board, we're all
Yeah,
here.
Mr. Chair.
And I think, I'm sorry, I was just
go
going to say then, back to, I think there might, things must have been set up as a resolution at some point as far as how we proceed as a Health and Human Services Board. So that might just need to be looked at again. And Coordinator Kelly and I did discuss, like, what I'm most familiar with that's different than ours. Some counties have it where it's as part of their board. It's their human services is as part of their county board. Some are like the way we are, where we come differently. And then Stearns notably is the one that I'm familiar with, that Melissa Huberty, their director, comes to the county board. They end the board meeting. They begin the Health and Human Services meeting. They end the Health and Human Services meeting and resume back to the board meeting. So it's just a different way to articulate the same kind of process, I would imagine.
And Mr. Chair, Jamie, what do you feel like for a frequency if you were going to the workshop for just an HHS workshop? I hate to go too seldom for the fact that I feel that we've become a very big disconnect between the county board and HHS and what's happening out there. But I also don't know that, I don't think monthly is the right amount, but either bi-monthly or quarterly.
To me, what would feel right at the onset would be monthly. Then I think because we do have commissioners that are on some of our task forces and things like that, I think if there's participation in that and that's coming back then to the county board meetings, I think that would be helpful as well, because we do discuss a lot of things at those meetings. So again, I'm just kind of new to this whole looking at it this way, but I would think once a month for workshops would be great.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the board here, as we transition to the administrator and change a few things up, if it comes to the point, this pertaining to HHS, if it turns that we're really getting more of a disconnect, it's not working right, we always have the ability to revert back to this if it's not accomplishing the mission.
Absolutely.
We have that flexibility there. So don't be afraid of change. Just say, okay, we'll try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you can go back to something else.
I'm a big believer in pilots. My staff hear me say all the time, we pilot things before we implement anything, just to kind of work the kinks out, and people aren't quite as fearful about it going forward sometimes when we're doing a pilot. So not that this would be a pilot, but that's a mindset that I'm very familiar with and I like.
All right, there's an attorney here who has some pertinent information, I'm assuming.
Mr. Chair, just for the board's information, my tech-savvy comrade, Mr. Kreiser, called up the statute. I did have the number wrong. It's chapter 402.
Oh.
Can't keep all of them straight. There's a provision in there that says if you have a single county human services agency, which some counties in Minnesota collaborate with other counties.
They do, yep.
But if you have a single county human services agency, the county board of commissioners can serve as the human services board. So I don't know that you even have to specifically designate that you're changing hats, so to speak. I mean, we would probably want to clarify if we were going to having it all happen in one county board meeting, we would probably want to have a resolution to that effect, that the County Board of Commissioners is assuming the powers of the Human Services Board, just to make it clear. I know you're the same 5 people that serve on both, but, so that, the statutes do contemplate that type of scenario.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Burrell?
And I guess that's kind of why I'm raising this question is, right now, we have the same 5 members are the Human Services Board, but we have a different chair. And I personally think that that's an okay thing because there's a lot of things going on. It's one of our biggest departments, and the board chair of the county has enough probably on their platter already that I think it's a good idea to have a separate chair. I don't know, but I do thank Commissioner Potter for saying what he did about we can do this and we can come back to it and review it and change it. And I'm wondering if maybe we shouldn't even set something up, to look at it just, in 3 months or 6 months and actually have it already planned for it, or we can just bring it up as needed, I guess. But, yeah, because it's a lot of changes. I know yesterday at Health and Human Services Board, I was not able to get things out that I wanted to because of time constraints, and I don't think that's good as
But that could have, but as a workshop, then we would have been focused on one particular thing instead of all the different things.
Doing our business and having our.
So, something, by going to a workshop, then you'd have more time because it would be on a specific issue.
I'm willing to give it a try, but I said if it's not working, then we might have to revisit it.
Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, and I actually had the same thought when I came up that Commissioner Burrell was saying about the dual roles with the board chair. And just as a logistical matter, we do have some contracts, and I'm not sure if it's the contractual part of it or not, where it requires the Health and Human Services Board chair to sign it. So we just have different signature lines, and especially things like public health. I think some of their statutes require Health and Human Services boards to look at things. So as long as it's clear, and Brian seems to think we can do that as part of a resolution to marry the 2 boards into one or something like that, then I think we might just initially scramble with like signatories and things like that, but I don't see any other issues. Thank you.
Does anybody else have?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to talk about one last piece here about the committee structure and whether we're going to continue to keep it. I mean, the recommendation here was to keep it in the capacity that it's in right now. I kind of, at that meeting, kind of waffled back and forth on that just because the concern of trying to tackle too many items in one workshop that I feel like the information will get too diluted, that will become very distant from it. So I'm inclined at this point to keep the committee structure, but I also want the workshops to be productive. So I'm trying to decide, do we maybe dilute out some of the committees that we don't necessarily need and put. I honestly feel like maybe the IT committee, some of the information that happens at that could be informed through a workshop. Maybe the Ways and Means. I really believe that the Personnel Committee should still exist because I think I don't want those informations watered down, and because I feel like we would become removed from some of those issues and if they came to a workshop. But I'm just hoping for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that, and I agree. I think personnel needs to be, stay the way it is, at least for now, and certain issues perhaps could be brought up as in a broader workshop. Ways and Means, that might be something that we'd look at for sometimes our Ways and Means and building are essentially the same topic. If we're discussing, say, the FBI or, building or the compost facility, that kind of thing. Sometimes some of those cross cross committee lines, so maybe those are good topics for workshops, but I think it's going to be a process, figuring out, how we're structuring all this going forward, and, but, yeah.
And I just want to make sure that, because my biggest fear is what we're going to end up doing is cramming a whole bunch of stuff into one 4-hour workshop where basically you're so fatigued over the items. I just don't think it's very productive at that point. I like to have meetings that are more centric on a certain topic than to have a long meeting that is covering a wide variety of topics, because then at that point, I feel like the things towards the back of the meeting tend to get rushed and not vetted out as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think the committee meetings are very valuable because it has an opportunity for our fellow commissioners to vet things out more thoroughly, which gives us an opportunity to focus more on the particular items. So I agree that I think the committee meetings should continue.
Okay.
At this point, and again, we as a board can decide what we want to send to committee, what we don't want to send to committee. So we have the control here, whether we have a coordinator or administrator.
Mr. Chair, what you just said there is a concern of mine is I want to make sure that the county board does maintain control. We are elected by the people in our county, and we have to be able to represent them as best we can. And if we just turn our authority over, I said on the school board is an example of that. You have 7 members and you have a superintendent. And sometimes as a school board member, I felt all we did was just came in and sat in the chair and told when to say yes and when to say no. I mean, and I don't want that to happen in the county here. I think we have more responsive government when the county commissioners are more active.
And I agree. And I know in the past that we've had things that have been on the consent agenda that have been pulled and sent to committee. So in the past, we've done it. I see no reason why in the future we wouldn't continue to do that. Because we do want to make sure that we have information that's provided to the citizens of Wright County.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, that's why I appreciate everybody weighing in on this, because like I said, I waffled back and forth on, I wanted the committee structure to exist, but I wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with what we were going to do, so I still agree that the committee structure is well, but I do want to leverage workshops for a certain level of items, so.
Yep. Coordinator Kelly, we've been talking, this kind of affects you a little bit. Do you have any input, discussions you want to talk about?
Sure, certainly. Well, and my point in having this meeting was to clarify the expectations of the role of the administrator going in. And secondly, I think the role of any good coordinator administrator as you look for opportunities to streamline and make efficient. Certainly, the board has the decision to adopt any of these recommendations or choose not to. That's entirely up to you. I was just seeking to kind of clarify the expectations as we go into the new year, and I assume the transition. So relative to the committees, I was hoping we could find some efficiencies in shortening up the number and frequency, but I'm kind of hearing now that might not be palatable to the board. So it's really a comfort level. I'm just trying to find where the board's at and what the expectations of the role are moving forward.
Okay, so we've had a couple of meetings. We've kind of set that beginning of January, we were going to transition over to this. So I guess the question before us is, should we have a resolution get put forward? Do we want to have another meeting to define this better? Do we want legal to come up with some talking points for us for another meeting? Where does the board have an interest in this?
Well, I think first of all, Mr. Chair, I think it's kind of two pieces. The recommendations is one, if we want to go with that side of it. I guess the first would be whether we want to go to the administrator first and then the recommendation second. I'm just asking for your opinion, is that?
Well, I mean, first off, we had the minutes that we can approve or not. But then after that point, we still need to figure out what our next step is. Because like I said, we've kind of been saying after the first of the year, we're going to transfer to administrator position. In order to do that, we have to have some legal requirements done, a resolution. So the question is, does everybody feel comfortable where we're at now? Or do we want to have legal come up with some additional talking points and have another meeting before we transition over to this? Where is the comfort level? So Commissioner Metch, what is your thought?
Well, I guess my question was, do you want to basically, are you looking for a motion to ask attorneys to draft up a resolution to be seen at a future meeting and then ask about these recommendations? Are we agreeing with these recommendations first and then drafting to have the attorney's office draft up a resolution to switch to an administrator?
Well, that's, again, you read the minutes. I haven't had a motion at all regarding these minutes.
I had a motion on the minutes, but I didn't, no motion on the recommendations, so.
Okay.
Did you get a second on the?
Yes, you
minutes?
did.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Houston.
Well, if you're having a motion on that first, then I'll just ask for a typo change under, on page 2 of 2, under suggested that committee minutes, consideration for discussion is spelled incorrectly.
Okay.
So I'll accept the change, so.
Okay.
Commissioner Potter,
Yes, I'll accept the change also.
what are your thoughts?
I believe we've
Where
already,
that correction
I'm
is,
sorry.
please? Could you repeat where that correction is, please?
Yep, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph that starts suggested that committee minutes. And under items for consider, it says discussion instead of discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Potter?
we've been talking about this, went from coordinator to administrator for the majority of the duration of the four of us have been on this board. And we're trying to hatch out everything, which if you're waiting for the perfect solution, you're kind of chasing your tail on this one. You're going to have to do your transition. There's going to be a couple bumps in the road. You're going to have some things that we think we have figured out now are probably going to change a little bit, and that's where a good administrator would know what's the board comfortable with, not comfortable with. I do agree with Commissioner Hewsome. Personnel committee, since that makes up 50% of our board, that for sure can't go away. I've seen a diminishing of the building committee meetings because we do have a facilities director on board now that can take care of a lot of mundane things that happened before. Efficiencies is where it's at on that. There are instances where a board will say refer this, that. I fully anticipate retaining that option in there. And we'll try a few things, HHS included. We'll try this transition, and maybe it'll work for us, and maybe it won't. If it turns out it's not working, we're not being able to focus on these workshop issues, we can always transition back to the way it was before. I mean, it's going to be a little change. I mean, you take any city that went from a city clerk to administrator to a city manager, same problems. The same questions come up all the time. Same questions I get. Once you pass through that and you say, okay, this is working great, and each county, like every city, is unique into itself on how they want to structure things and the personality makeup on the board. Going forward with this is the correct way, in my opinion. The thing is, we're going to have a couple bumps along the road, and we're just going to have to figure out what we're comfortable with and how we want to transition this and make it work for the betterment of the people. Like Commissioner Burrell said, we represent the people. We want to make sure that we're doing this best way we can. I don't like getting caught up in what's called the 4 levels of leadership. And I say, we don't want to get caught up in the mundane where we're micromanaging things. We need to be the visionaries looking at the long picture thing with being mindful of the people. And that's what they elected us for, is to make this run efficient.
And, Mr. Chair, I guess where I'm coming from is, when I get a call from a constituent, I don't want to just say, oh, well, talk to our administrator or talk to this here person and then merely go on my way. I mean, if they have some concerns and we're doing something that we do need to change our policy or we do need to change our ways, I'm kind of a hands-on person that way. I think most of the board members here know that.
Well, everybody is.
We all are.
That's not going to change.
Yes, right, we're still going to be commissioners.
And I don't know why you would even concern yourself that that would change, because they're still going to contact you, and you still have control over that. So I'm not sure.
But I'm saying right now, I feel I have a little more hands-on with the way it is now.
But
and I realize this. I've gone through this.
But I don't see where you see a change occurring when somebody would contact you regarding an issue. I don't understand where you would think that you would not have any more control, or you would not be able to discuss it.
I think and I said maybe it depends on the board member, but I just think it's going to say, oh, well, call this person, call that person, and you're out of it, you know? Otherwise, what do we do? I mean, we talk to Lee, that's it, right?
For what?
For some issue, somebody's having a problem with a department, and you know some that are going on right now, you know? Then my contact is going to be Lee, or can I go to the department heads and say what's going on here?
Well, I would.
Chair, the Lee, I mean, yeah, the best process would be to go to Lee first and try to resolve it. I mean, ultimately, Lee couldn't stop you from going to the department head and asking whatever questions you want to ask. I mean, it would be against his will to do that, because now you're going to have a board member that doesn't going to be very happy with your administrator if he tries to be an obstructionist. I mean, because he works for the will of the board, so his duty is to fulfill the wishes of the board. And if he's going to be obviously being obstructionist to the board, I don't think his tenure with us would be very long.
See, I think actually it's a benefit, because if we funnel everything through, Lee, instead of each of us doing things individually, we can find patterns.
Yeah, true.
So if we have a central landing site, now we know if there's an issue with a particular department head, now we have somebody that's gathering all that information instead of just people not saying anything to anybody.
Okay. Well, I guess, okay, and then, so Mr. Chair, I guess you kind of were throwing out some things, where do we want to go, and I guess I'll just put my thing out. I would like to have one more meeting, and maybe I'll talk to you in between to run some scenarios by and see how you would envision things happening. But I guess I would, you know, I'm kind of with Commissioner Vetch on this. I was, if it was just me, I would not be supportive of it. I know if it's going to be a 4-1 thing, I don't want to be the odd person out on this, because it's something that I do see the potential benefit as well as the potential weakening of the county commissioner role, and that's where I guess I'm kind of torn on that. So I guess I would like to just set up another meeting maybe, and in between maybe talk to Mr. Chair and run some scenarios by and see how it would play out, so.
Okay, and I have no problem with another meeting, but I want talking points. I want to know exact concerns so that we can have specific issues addressed before that meeting.
Because, Mr. Chair, because one of the talking points that I have the issue with is if we are going to dilute, I kind of going back to I want to keep all the committee structure.
Which I think is pretty much everybody's agreed upon.
The other piece I'm worried about is I want to make sure that we're not diluting anything in this process as far as the personnel committee goes. The hiring above 12%, I still want to maintain that control at our point at this level at this point. I don't want to eliminate our ability to backfill employees. I mean, as much as this seems counterintuitive to an administrator role, I feel like at that point we'll be very disconnected as to what positions are open. You'll be very disconnected on what people are getting hired for, and then that basically eliminates our duties as elected officials to control the budget. Then at that point, then the administrator should be put on the ballot to be elected. Then, you know, so
again, we have control on what we're going to do.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vetch, we still set the limits of, you know, what the hiring percentages and that kind of thing. So we as a county board set that. And I guess we've had so many meetings about this already. Perhaps one more meeting, you know, would solidify things, but I'm ready to go forward. I don't know how many meetings we need about this, so.
I don't necessarily need a meeting. I just want to basically make sure that I want to make sure that this is very crystal clear, because I don't want to set Lee up for failure, because if I feel like there's some things that weren't very clear and he's assuming roles that I wasn't very clear on, it's going to set him up for failure, because I'm going to bump heads with that, so.
Okay, so since we have some other meetings coming up yet today, and we have quite a few more discussions that we need to have regarding today's board meeting, I have a suggestion. Why don't we have talking points sent to county attorney's office? So your particular concerns that you have. Brian or Greg, you want to come up here? Uh-oh. So would it be possible if we sent you our concerns, whichever commissioner has it, that you can help define it in part as a resolution or in a talking point for another meeting? How does the board feel about that?
I don't know about the word talking points, I guess, just issues that are concerns of ours.
Okay, so Greg, how do you think we could handle this?
Mr. Chair, at this
I'm going to
point,
put you on the spot.
you most certainly can, and I'm glad you are, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I guess looking at this from a legal perspective, I'm wondering about the timeline, and my overriding concern, and Lee's going to hate me for saying this, and I'm sure he's going to shoot daggers at me. I'm concerned that we're maybe pushing this through too quick. I hear a lot of concerns from the board right now, and we have the holidays coming up here. You basically have one more board meeting, then you have a financial-only board meeting, and then it's the new year. And you're trying to do this by January 1st. So my overriding concern, just from a legal perspective, is are we pushing this through too quick right now? And did we create an artificial deadline of January 1 that I think the board needs to decide? Do you still want to keep that deadline? If you do, we can make it happen next week. If you want to push it out, try to figure out these issues, we can do that too.
We wouldn't have to adopt the resolution until January 8th on that day then.
If you're trying to make it effective January 1, we need to get done before January 1.
You can make it official on the January 8th, the first board meeting adopted at that meeting.
You can make it any date. Right now, the artificial date I have is January 1. So it's whatever you want to make.
Okay, so, again, do you want to have your issues presented to a county attorney to have it addressed as part of a resolution, or as discussion points, have another meeting, probably the first week in January, and we could still probably do the resolution January 8th. They could provide us with a preliminary resolution that first week in January. Okay, since nobody's going to make the decision, what I'm going to suggest is that the Attorney's Office come up with a resolution to address each individual commissioner's concerns.
That would be.
If they don't provide it to you, then that means that there are no concerns. And we will meet that first week in January before the January 8th board meeting. How does that sound to
You want to meet the first, okay, so like the 3rd or the 4th, and have a committee of the whole to discuss this piece, and then pass the resolution
Can you do that between?
potentially on January 8th?
Right, I would like a committee of the whole.
Is there enough time to do that in that?
Do that
I
before
know
our
Chris doesn't want any
organizational
more
meeting.
meetings, but
I don't know, that's where I'm trying to figure out. This is,
Before, you mean before?
before we
no,
go
what?
past something, yeah.
Am I making it more confusing?
Mr. Chair, I'll take whatever lead the board wants to give me, but really the only legal issue is switching over from coordinator to administrator.
Yep.
And what you want to do as far as a resolution with the Health and Human Services Board.
Yep.
The rest of it really is a policy determination that the board can make on its
Right.
own afterwards. It's really not a legal perspective as far as how many committee structures do you have? How do you do this? That can be something that can be worked out with either the current coordinator or the then administrator if you decide to make that switch. So
clarify
I'm
something
happy to
for
do
me.
whatever you want.
Because of the role of an administrator, and basically through that job description, there's a lot of kind of, I'm going to call it grayness. And that's the reason I just want to make sure that I'm just not that he's not going to be able to have to define that gray area and make assumptions. I just want to know at what point do we get to have that discussion to define that gray area as far as some of the personnel matters that I just don't feel at this point I'm willing to give up at that point. I mean, if I'm pushing the corner and have to make a decision, I feel like, okay, I wasn't given due service. We should have been having these discussions started back in September, but I'm waiting until the 5-yard line at the end of the year. And so that's where I want to understand where that piece comes in, because that's where a lot of the rub is going to be. So
Coordinator Kelly, you still want the job?
Sound like it won't be an option.
It just seems like some of these, issues aren't going to be issues. We're still having our personnel committee. You're still going to have the ability to yay or nay the recommendations of the personnel committee or any other committee, as we do with IT. These things are vetted very thoroughly. So if the committee structure stays the same, and that's, according to recommendation, it is, like Attorney Kreiser said, what if there is an issue, we're here to address those issues. We're changing from coordinator to administrator, but a lot of the things aren't going to change.
I hope, that's really, I just waiting for somebody to tell me definitively that basically all matters that currently go to the Personnel Committee will continue to go to the Personnel Committee minus the reviews of department heads pending the switch. That would be the piece of the information, and the same with all other items that have gone to the committee structures would still go to the committee structures as is. I just want to make sure that I'm not making a decision that is all of a sudden, we're going to have a Personnel Committee, but nothing goes there. So, because all of a sudden we inherently, he's going to define his role of telling where he wants to hire people within the ranges outside of what we want to say.
And again, I think we have that control.
We do, but it's not.
Then all that needs to be is stated in the policy on how the administrator is going to work. So to move on, first off, I have a first and a second regarding just the minutes, none of the recommendations. Or you stated no recommendations.
I didn't do anything with the recommendations at this point. I just put the minutes so we could open up the discussion.
Okay, so let's talk about, we got to fix that door.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second regarding just the minutes. I want to move this thing along because we got to get moving here.
We got lots going on.
So, all those in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. All right, so from what I'm hearing with this board, we're not in a position to move forward with an administrator at this point until there's another meeting that takes place. But again, I would say that we should have that sometime after the first of the year when we can.
Do we need to, though, Mr. Chair?
Can't we do it next week?
Yeah, why can't we go on the 20th when we meet with BKV that day? Are we having a meeting after Christmas for financial only?
At this point, we had nothing planned.
Okay. I was just curious.
Meeting is the 8th, so.
So, somebody give me a motion on how they want to proceed.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make the motion, I don't have the date, but to have the meeting sooner rather than later. I mean,
So, again, do you want to push this through, or do we just want to take a little more time and he starts February 1st instead of January 1st?
Actually, you know what? That might be better. That's kind of what our county attorney is also subtly encouraging us, maybe.
No, he wants to take time off during the holidays. He just doesn't want to have to work.
But
Let's be honest here.
But if you want the resolution, I have to draft it by tomorrow at noon.
I think maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, and it wouldn't matter if it was March 1st or April 1st or whatever. I think rather than.
No, I recommend we don't do April 1st.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
Well, the thing is,
bad data.
I mean, if we're moving forward with, the to go to the workshop, the three meetings and one workshop per month? I mean, how long do we, how
Well, that,
far do we want to push this out? I think this is getting,
we didn't
We-
really
we-
agree to that, though.
But
Those
why
are the
didn't we meet earlier in the
recommendations. We
year?
just
That's
did the
where I
minutes.
struggle with this.
we were there when we made the recommendations. We were part of this meeting that came up with these recommendations. So that's, I guess that's my frustration here. Like, how many times, you know, what are the concerns and why weren't they brought up there? Or if they were, why didn't we effectively address them?
See, and without getting in, I know this chair wants to move along, but I did bring up concerns, and it kind of got blown off. It's not in the minutes, but it got blown off. And I said it about as far as investigating things. Well, that's not part of this. Well, it is part of this, because right now, as a commissioner, I have a lot of authority, I have a lot of latitude, and I won't after this.
You still
So
will.
it is part of this.
You will still will. Your role will be.
That's what I want to, that's what I want to talk with Mr. Chair and our coordinator and.
Again,
see
you're an
how that-
elected official, I don't know
I would
where
like
that
to-
would change.
I don't want to do it at a board meeting, but I would like to run some scenarios by and say, how would this play out? How would this play out? So I have some assurance that I'm not just giving up my,
Mr. Chair, I don't think you're losing power, Charlie. What you're going to do is you're going to lose the ability to get the information. And you'll be kept in the dark because they won't need your vote for it. And they won't need your decision on it. And that's where my biggest fear is. It's hard for me to manage or be informed when I don't have to make the decision and the information isn't given to me. And that's where I'm afraid that I'm afraid I'm going to be taking
but if we had a structure from the board in place that would give us that authority, then I could support this wholeheartedly. So, but anyway, you wanted a recommendation, I guess maybe we'll just go and have another meeting if it's after the beginning of the year. I don't care when it is, Mr. Chair, but I would like to have that other meeting, and before that, I wouldn't mind talking with you and running some scenarios by.
Well, I would also recommend that you talk to legal,
Yeah.
because they're going to be in a better position to legally tell you what you can do,
All right.
where I can say, this is how I feel.
I'm not talking to him. Every time I ask him, he says it's illegal.
No, not every time, I know.
Well, I can't think of one where he said it was okay.
Well, you got to stop asking me illegal things. Never going to tell you can speed.
Okay, so back to the original question, because we got to get moving on here, guys.
Okay.
Can I have a motion? To do something.
Yes.
I don't care what, to do something.
If you want to have another meeting, I suggest that we have it on the 20th of December. Let's get this stuff taken care of before the first of the year. I mean, so we can move forward.
So is that a motion?
That's the motion.
Do I have a second on the motion?
I'll second it. What time?
11?
We're meeting with BKV at 8:30 to
Correct.
win.
Yeah.
8:30 till they're planning noon, longer
So-
meeting, so I would suggest afternoon.
1:30?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock? You want to give yourself enough time for lunch?
1
And then come back? All right.
Does anybody have any issues with that particular date?
No. It's a great date. It's my birthday.
Yes. Well, celebrate with us.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Hewson, a second by Commissioner Burrell, to have a meeting on the 20th at 1:30 in the afternoon to discuss.
1 o'clock. I said 1 o'clock, but,
1 o'clock?
or whatever.
Commissioner Vetch was saying 1:30, because we
It
have.
depends how much time you want for lunch.
That gives us an hour for lunch.
Well,
All right. Charlie?
we might get pizza. You never know.
All right, so, meeting at 1 o'clock. Again, for discussion regarding administrative position, and again, I urge you to put your questions that you have either in writing, discuss it with Coordinator Kelly at this point, so that you know exactly how his feelings are, talk to legal about it, so that we can make some decisions on the 20th. Does everybody feel okay with that?
Yes.
None of this, all of a sudden, I got this issue. I want to, let's get it done.
Yeah, we
If
gotta
I can
it
get
done.
some, Mr. Chair, if I can get some clarity on this, and Greg draft up a resolution, provided that if we could accomplish on the 20th, that we could either adopt that resolution on the 8th, or if we decided we wanted to have a special meeting on the 26th or something after Christmas for financial reasons, that we could adopt it at that time, but at least we'd have it ready to go.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vetch, I'll have 2 resolutions ready for you to go, at least draft format.
Okay.
So,
If we can get this
So,
cleared up.
anything that you have that you want, put in that resolution that the attorneys are comfortable with putting in it, or regarding a policy that maybe they can help us draw up, please talk to the attorneys about it, so again, so we can do something one way or the other on the 20th. Okay?
All right.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Coordinator Kelly, that also goes for you.
Okay?
So if you want it written in policy or in the resolution that you want to be king of all, I would suggest you talk to the attorneys about it.
we'll have discussion on that.
Mr. Chair, for time sensitiveness, can we just approve the minutes for the Ways and Means and the Ag Inspector? The minutes are in writing that the general public can read through them, but just for time sensitivity at this point?
We didn't do the other Justice Center.
Oh, the other ones, but just because
I think with the Justice Center also, we could probably just,
they're all different committees.
Commissioner Potter, I'd asked you to do the committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Justice Center Owners Committee met on the 21st, and you'll see those that were all present. First off, Mr. Heeb opened up a discussion on the update and the schedule of current activity. Ultra Concrete is pouring that storage room vault at that day. U.S. Site Work was tying in underground water to the west side of the facility. One of the contractors continuing the framing of the interior walls. The exterior face of the precast panel mounting was getting close. It mobilized. They'd already put some a panel up, and what they discovered is that the Wells concrete, when they made the panel on areas in the second floor that are raised floor, the welding tabs were in the wrong spot. That was their problem. Their engineers had to come out and come up with a solution for it. It's not the whole thing, it's just parts of it. And they came up with, I believe the solution was drilling pins in, and that's an on-site thing, to connect them and then weld the tabs up to the next one there. And that's not for all of it. So that's just a minor thing, but that's what, keep you updated on that. And you notice that they've been starting to go around the corner. A lot more panels have been going up as we go. Kevin Curry, who's the scheduling guru out there, that guy's really good at that. I'm impressed with how he keeps things in line. Went through the overall timing and the budget worksheets where everything's on time. We've only spent a small percentage of the contingencies line item. And we talked about some of the changes. One of the changes, a significant credit due to the removal of a fire pump and associated work. That was $48,000, so that comes credit back to us. PR8 is a disagreement over Stronghold, which is the items omitted of the original bid. I think that has to do with some of the hardware there. Negotiations discussed and taking place. The results of the discussion brought next owners committee review. Relate to the change order in the raised floor areas due to in-floor heat tubing and necessary framing.
Okay, Commissioner Potter.
You want it quicker?
All that information is on.
Okay. You know, so far, I just go fair. We're just, the antenna going there, and recommendations move forward the approval of PR 17 and continue progress on the next project. Next meeting is the 19th at 1 o'clock. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and recommendations. Recommendations.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Fetch. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Commissioner Burrell, do you have anything regarding the Wright County Ag Inspector?
No, just, Mr. Chair, that I think we came up with a good payment structure. He did a real good report. He's been doing a great job. And I actually want to think that we're going to probably clone what he did with what we did with his contract with our ditch inspector, to have just a set fee that they're going to do. We'll have to adjust the amount per se, but I think it would be something that we might be able to retain our ditch inspector with a structure such as this.
Okay, if that's the case, then I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Ways and Means Committee minutes and the recommendations.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Burrell, second by Commissioner Houston. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Coordinator Kelly, are you the one that takes care of the Wright County Medical Examiner?
You missed one.
Can we address the resolution
Yeah.
for the ag inspector, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll
Oh, I'm
make,
sorry.
Resolution, oh.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion, we move forth the resolution to do the contract with the Dr. Quinn Strobel, the...
No, no, no.
No.
Ag inspector.
Oh, the ag inspector first? Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Please.
I'll make a motion then that we adopt the resolution for the ag inspector for the upcoming year.
Second.
Resolution, motion by Commissioner Burrell, second by Commissioner Potter. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Commissioner Burrell?
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Okay, sorry about that.
Now it's government center.
All right.
Government
The
Center.
whole
What?
C.
Schedule 3.
Now we have the committee of the
Oh,
whole
Mr. Chair, I'll
regarding.
make a motion to schedule committee of the whole for December 20th at 8:30 a.m.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Vetch. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Sorry. Okay. You want to talk about the appointing the medical examiner?
Yes, we have used the Anoka County Medical Examiner for many years for this service. It's been very cost effective. However, we are required annually to officially appoint Dr. Strobel. This is, I see it as a bit of a housekeeping issue. We just have to do annually, so.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to pass a resolution to continue using Dr. Quinn Strobel, medical examiner.
Second.
With the County of Anoka.
Pardon?
With the County of Anoka,
County of Anoka.
since I'm assuming they're involved in this.
I'd imagine.
All right, motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Burrell. Any other discussions?
Resolution.
Resolution, Commissioner Burrell.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Okay, 2019 draft budget and levy. All right, yeah. Okay, for those that were not here or present in mind on Thursday, we met and had some discussions regarding our budget and levy. I don't know, Coordinator Kelly, what are your thoughts?
Well, in my mind, you have a couple different options. We've met all the statutory requirements that we needed to by having our meeting after 6 p.m. We certainly received comment and input from the public on that. So today, I believe your options are you could adopt the resolution as it was presented preliminarily, which would be a 17.3% increase. We could schedule an additional meeting to discuss another budget committee of the whole, if you would like to call it that, or you could direct staff to make any adjustments or provide a target at this time.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 budget and levy as it was presented and gone through there.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Third time, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Vetch. Is there any discussions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to have another meeting before we go on with this. I do think there's some things that we could still adjust on the budget. And I think it needs more discussion than just what we have time for here today.
Commissioner Potter?
Mr. Chair, we've had a lot of discussions. We've gone through the budget a lot of times. Any adjustments at this point in time, all you're going to do is kick that can down the road for next year to this year's budget. Ugly as I'll get up. Everybody agrees with that. It is merely a correction to make sure that we think of things that are coming, future expenses, future things coming at us. I just don't feel comfortable kicking the can down the road, because I think that's what's caused us some of this heartburn now. I remember the saying, nobody remembers who lit the fuse, they just remember when the bomb went off, who's there. The fuse was lit quite a while ago, the bomb went off now, we need to correct this so we can move forward from here. Again, I also made the point that my commercial property with this budget will be less than it was 3 years ago. Same property, so it's...
Which is my concern, is that this thing is not fair.
That's the state of Minnesota. We have
and I agree.
We don't get to do that. We don't get to make that call.
I agree.
You know, and if we don't address it now, we're going to basically make sure that it's going to be double-digit increases for the next few years. I mean, all the models, all the things that it's going out there. We need to make this correction, and the tax rate was the problem in the first place. We've corrected the problem. Okay, we've gone through it. I mean, one person said they wanted a $9 million reduction in the levy. We know better than that. It's not possible. And the other things going on, if we don't do it this year, all you're going to do is put it off till next year, and then you're going to guarantee that it's going to be over 10% again, without even because we're going to be, this year's budget, part of the problem is 6.8% pre-approved before we even started. And that was part of the problem, and I think we've all learned some of the lessons that doing there, and I just think the discussion's been had, and it's time for us to get this approved and done. Another budget meeting, where are you going to shave? And we had scenarios where if we shaved $1, $2, $3 million off, it really didn't make a hill of beans difference in what you're going to pay there now. And granted, we got that ruling from the Department of Revenue in reference to the Monticello nuclear plant. We're in that boat, and we know that's going to probably come up for the next 2 years, so we can, now that we know that it's coming, we can adjust future budgets to that. This year was kind of like blowing it at us after the fact, after we put a preliminary budget in there. It's been kind of a tough one, and I just feel that we've talked about this budget, we've had a lot of meetings, and to have another one I don't think is going to resolve anything.
Okay, your point has been taken. Commissioner, did you have something you want to state?
I don't know, unless, I'm just curious if Commissioner Burrell had something specific. I've done the same thing. Okay, you take $1 million off and you shift it till next year. It really doesn't change what we got this year. So it's not, if it was going to be a significant impact that we could reduce it by, several points, we can't. I mean, we brought it down from 24 down to 17. That was significant, and I looking at our budget, I don't know what, I could say, yeah, we could take $1 million off here, but it's not going to change our percentage to speak of.
Okay, for all the people that are showing up, we're still dealing with the board meeting. The AIS meeting won't be starting until 11 o'clock, just so that you're aware of it.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hewson, you're wholly right. I mean, and Commissioner Potter, we've gone through this and we've agonized knowing that it was high to start with, and we've cut out everything that could possibly cut out that isn't going to have future impacts. And as much as I don't like it, I don't see any other way to move forward.
I agree.
All right, is there any other discussions? So we're just going to vote on it. This doesn't need to be in a resolution at this point?
It does, actually.
Okay.
And just for a reminder, our budget as was presented, and I would say here, $147,090,953 for the budget. The levy would be $73,524,014.
Okay, so what I guess we'll have to change it that Commissioner Potter is to approve the budget and levy to have a resolution drafted for the next meeting. So that's what your motion would have to say.
I printed copies of if you want it now.
So what are we doing here? Are we approving it, or are we drafting a resolution to approve it?
Well, I made copies of what was approved in September in resolution form, if you want to review that, or do you want to lay it over to the 18th meeting to adopt it?
Commissioner Potter, was your motion?
I took it
My
was that
motion
we were
was to
adopting it.
approve what we had done, what we've already went through the public, truth and taxation.
So you're approving the resolution?
I will-
Even though we haven't seen it?
The resolution, I mean, as far as we haven't seen it, as far as, we've
Recently.
seen it, it hasn't changed one bit from what we originally adopted in September, so we
Well,
haven't
just
seen
don't-
it.
We don't have it in front of us
Oh,
right
yeah, I mean,
now.
yeah,
Okay.
I want to say we didn't see it, we saw it, it just hasn't changed since September.
And Mr. Chair,
Yep.
for, just to add why I'm not going to be supportive of this is Commissioner Potter's commercial property might not have gone up much, but I have two farms and one went up, just the county share, 13%, and the other one was 18%. So, and I represent a largely agricultural area. I realize that it's going to affect them a lot, and I can't support the budget as it is right now.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Potter and a second by Commissioner Vetch. Is there any other discussions? Resolution? Commissioner Vetch?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
No? Resolution carries 3-2.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask, you not weighing in on anything as to what you would have done differently if we're not adopting the budget, just out of curiosity, just for transparency purposes.
I think that there would be a few things that we could have changed with possibly using some reserves or reducing. And yes, it would not have a major effect, but it does have an effect. I'm hoping that the legislators will address some of the fairness issues. Again, your business property didn't go up. One of mine stayed even. One of them only went up 2%. My daughter's house went up 17.5%. It's not a good system, and this is my way of saying, legislators, stand up and take notice. You need to get this thing fixed and straightened out. So, that's my opinion, and the resolution is carried. Because of our time constraint, I am not going to allow anybody to talk about any advisory committees or advisory board updates. Other than Coordinator Kelly, is there anything that you think we need to be aware of?
Nothing that can't wait till a future meeting.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that for timing.
Is there anything that somebody has to be
Mr. Chair,
discussed?
just real briefly, we are hosting the Minnesota Rural Caucus here on January 7th, and our next meeting I'll bring forth. I'd like to make it a authorized attendance for the rest of the board as long as we're hosting, and see what we're about, so.
All right.
that's it.
All right. It is 10:44. We are adjourned. Next meeting at 11 o'clock.